We'll stay in the NBA bubble and move to the Eastern Conference. The Milwaukee Bucks have looked underwhelming at times, but appear to be in no danger of losing the number one seed. The Raptors, well, they look sharp so far, and they've separated from that other group of East teams, which includes the Celtics, Heat, Pacers, and 76ers. And yes, I'm aware there are three other Eastern Conference teams, Orlando, but I'm going to ignore them for right now on purpose. So give me your impression of the bubble-wrapped Eastern Conference so far.
I just want to talk about those three teams. I mean, why you gotta ignore them? They're here too. No, I'm not even.
I'll tell you what. You feel free to do so I can talk about something that's relevant.
I can't say that I planned on doing that. So what I am going to talk about, though, is the Raptors, one of the teams you mentioned in the lead-in there. So I think one of the biggest storylines coming out of the Eastern Conference so far with the restart, it's got to be the defending champion Toronto Raptors. And it's probably time we start saying that sentence like we mean it, because at this point, these guys have proven they didn't come here to be a pity party or be a sideshow. They look like they're here to win another freaking championship. And I mean, they look kind of scary, when you watch them. We've talked about Nick Nurse and his crew before. Nurse's coaching has been brilliant this year, probably even more so than last year when they won a championship. Obviously, if you live under a rock, they lost Kawhi Leonard, and, they don't have that nuclear weapon anymore, but they may not even need it, because these guys are in the 2 seed right now out East. And they're probably not going to catch Milwaukee, but as they've proven so far, it looks like they can pretty much handle anyone that isn't Milwaukee, and we'll see how that matchup plays out. But one of the things that's really propelled the Raptors so far this year is their defense, and it's really been punctuated by their win over the Lakers last Saturday. Lowry did his thing. He led them to a 107-92 win. He had 33 points, 14 rebounds. But, what really kind of stood out was their defensive prowess, specifically on Anthony Davis and also on LeBron. AD in that game was just 2 for 7 from the field. He had 14 points, and LeBron wasn't much better. You've already talked a little about how some of the problems LeBron's had, but he was just 7 of 15 for 20 points in that game. And really, what it is interesting about it is it's not just some Nick Nurse big brain defense that's like reinventing the NBA. They're just an excellent team on defense. They play great team defense. They have excellent talent. And what you're seeing with the Raptors is a good mix of you draft well, you get good draft picks. And then the second part that most teams forget, you develop that said talent. And you have this foundation to where when you lose a player like Kawhi Leonard, oh, we're still good. Weird. You have your veteran leaders like Lowry. We've clowned him before, bar of soap, no doubt. But he's playing good basketball right now. He had 33 and 14 that Lakers victory, and he played like he did last year. I mean, he played at a championship level in that game. You have these kind of veteran leaders. You have Serge Ibaka, and you've got these guys that are blossoming before our eyes, guys like Pascal Siakam. But I think what the real danger of the Raptors is, and this is just off the court type thing, this team absolutely unequivocally buys in and believes. Like when you watch them play, when you watch them in a huddle, they have an underdog mentality. They have sold, somehow Nick Nurse is sold it, which I guess isn't hard with how the media covers them, but they have sold and bit and sold on the fact that they are underdogs. And despite the trophy being in their house right now, and they believe that they can beat anyone any night. And those two things in sports are incredibly dangerous. I don't care what you're playing or when you're playing it. So yeah, they may not have Kawhi, but I don't know. Given this in a 7-game series, I would still lean towards Milwaukee beating them, but they might come up with enough defensive schemes to slow Giannis down, and it could be a 7-game slugfest in the Eastern Conference Finals, which you would very much expect Toronto and Milwaukee to be in at this point. But I would be completely remiss if I didn't also mention the hottest name in the bubble that anyone's talking about. No other than one cash considerations, TJ Warren. The man is a 6'8" walking bucket. And he wasn't watching Netflix and chilling in quarantine. This dude was getting to work, obviously. Obviously, he kicked the door down in this first game. He scored 53 points on 20 of 29 shooting, including a franchise-tying record, 9 of 12 from 3. He led the Pacers to a 127-121 win over Philly. That was despite Embiid going for 41 and 21. That career high wasn't a one-off either. He put 34 on the admittedly hapless Wizards squad. And he also did register 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 4 blocks in that game. So it wasn't just scoring. And, of course, he could have relaxed against Orlando, but he decided, 32 more, put it in the bag. So he joins Reggie Miller, Jermaine O'Neal, and Billy Knight is the only Pacers to drop 50-plus, and he tied Paul George's franchise record from threes, like I said. So believe it or not, folks, he's actually been good this whole year. That's one of the things that even like I missed it too. I mean, a lot of people kind of missed it, but he's had a really good year since he went to Indiana. He's averaging 19.7 points on 53% shooting and shooting 40% from three. And he's had 8 games now where he scored more than 30. So with Victor Oladipo getting healthier and Malcolm Brogdon doing his thing, the Pacers could make some noise come playoff time. And my final kind of look ahead sort of is really, I'm looking at Boston real quick. This is a team that we think could be a contender or truly, be on the doorstep of contention. But hey, Big Brain Brad and the Celtics are 2-2 in this bubble. Jason Tatum had a 2 for 18 night in their first game. They lost to Milwaukee. They bounced back against Portland when Brown and Tatum scored 64 combined. But then they couldn't stop the Heat. They dropped that game, and then they went ahead and beat the Nets bench last night. So like, the thing with Boston is it's kind of like a what gives, and really it's defense. On the opposite side of the spectrum from the Raptors, Boston ain't playing defense. Do you know that they're actually second to last in total defense in the bubble? They're 21 out of 22 teams since the restart. They gave up 63 points to a Heat team that did not have the services of Jimmy Butler that night. They're giving up 42 three-point attempts per game. It's bad. And this wasn't a terrible defensive team coming in. It's not like, oh, well, Boston, they don't play defense. We all know that. Like, yeah. They had these rangy athletic guys like Tatum and Brown and Smart all over the place. They were 4th in total defensive efficiency coming into the pre-shutdown. So there's no reason this should be happening. They got to clean it up. But I think at the end of the day, this team's going to go as far as Tatum and Brown can take them. But Brown got the big contract. Tatum's not far behind. We all know that he was kind of on that fringe of becoming a star, a superstar before our eyes. But he's had some rocky starts now, and you got to think, hey, fellas, it's time to shine. And if Boston's going to really make some noise in this playoffs, it's time to do it.
Well, yeah, and let's talk. Let me give some love to Toronto. I think they're very deserving of it. And let me tell you this. I think one of the things that when you look at this bubble coming together, some of these things, it's pretty much just like starting over. Some teams are going to get off to slow starts. Some teams fast starts. It's just the nature of a restart. You don't know how each team is going to react. Toronto's reacted really well. Boston, not so much. I haven't been all that impressed with them. But here's one of the things I would tell you. Perhaps a reason for Toronto is we know offense comes and goes. Defense can be – if you're a good defensive team, though, that should be a constant. And Toronto is, as you say, an excellent defensive team-oriented. Ibaka, Gasol, although Gasol's offense has kind of disappeared, or he's still the guy that can get it done on the defensive end, as well as Ibaka. Lowry, he's a pest. He's an irritant, not only to players but to me as well. And how about Fred VanVleet? Can we give some love to him? They got two. Lowry and VanVleet can light it up from outside. Absolutely. And then when you look at, obviously no Kawhi Leonard, but you get OG Anunoby back, and he's not Kawhi Leonard, but you lose him. Remember, Anunoby was injured last year, so you get him back from injury, and you immediately plug him back in the starting lineup. So it doesn't completely offset, but it helps when you had a guy like Anunoby who can absolutely ball. You get him back, plus you got Siakam. My question about Toronto is, I think they're going to, as good as they defend, their defense is going to keep them in every game. I'm looking at how they close out games. I don't know how they close out. I don't think they have a quote-unquote closer. I mean, if you tell me it's Lowry, I'm going to just say, well, okay, we'll see about that. Remember, historically, before last season, he's a playoff no-show, and I'm not going to all of a sudden proclaim him, the guy when Kawhi was the one leading the charge. Lowry was the second fiddle guy, you know what I'm saying? So now if you're going to tell me if it's going to be Lowry with the bright lights are on, scoring the ball, I'm not going to buy that just yet. But he is absolutely deserving of our respect. He is now a champion. He was in that Laker game. He was absolutely great. He was phenomenal. And then, again, is it going to be Siakam to close? Is he ready for that? He is an all-star. He had another outstanding jump in his production. But we'll see. But they're absolutely impressive. And, again, it's another one of those situations where the 2 and 3, there's a big difference. Because the 2 seed is going to get, they're going to get essentially a bye week. Or, a bye week.
Yeah,
they're going to get Brooklyn or Orlando. Wake me up when that series is over. So Boston, and I'm still sticking with Boston. I think they're the biggest threat to Milwaukee, but they haven't responded well thus far. And their losses are to Milwaukee in that opening game. That's about, oh, by the way, the only game Milwaukee's won so far, unless they came back to beat the Heat today. But Miami, they also lost to Miami, which are two of the other teams in the top four that you're looking at. And so that's a little bit concerning, but they still got time. They still got some time to figure it out. I think they will. I will tell you this. I talk about the 4B, the B plus guys. I always talk about them. And I think Tatum is taking a step, even though, he was getting a lot of clown. He was getting a lot of slander off that 2 for 18 clunker that he put up.
He had 34 the next night. So
he did, absolutely. These type of things happen. Some of these things are fluky that we're witnessing in this bubble. They absolutely are. But I'm gonna put the onus on a guy named Kemba Walker. I haven't seen him have one of those big time games in a while. So I'm looking at him. I need to see a little bit more from him. I think it's crucial that he come out there and be that veteran leadership that they need and balance out these young guys. And he's not the only one. Let's see Gordon Hayward be consistent as well. Those are your 4 guys, though. And you sprinkle in a little Marcus Smart, a little Daniel Theis. And they're not, when you look at their depth, and I'm not saying that they don't have quality depth, but it's not overwhelming. It's not the depth that Milwaukee has. I would say Miami, to me, I think they got better depth. So it's going to be incumbent on your big 4, so to speak, for those guys to lead the way, because you're not going to, guys like Ojale and Grant Williams and Brad Wanamaker, they're going to give you good minutes, but they're not going to be lighting it up on the scoreboard. I'm not going to see that. And then I think Miami, we got to give some love to Miami's front office. They draft Tyler Hero, but not only that, they get 2 undrafted rookies who are starting and lighting it up, and Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson. And they can light it up from behind the arc as a team. With those 3 guys, Jay Crowder's shooting the ball well right now. Bam Adebayo is a monster. He's great. And of course, Jimmy Butler with his all-around game. He's a leader. He's a dog. He does it on both ends. Very efficient. So they're an interesting team to watch. I still think there's a pretty good cutoff between your top 4. I think there's a clear cutoff, even though Indiana and Philly are close. But as far Milwaukee, to me, they're still the team to beat. But I'm gonna tell you what, they got to get it together. They got to use their first round series. They got to take it seriously and get back to playing pre-corona. They got to get back to playing that level. Because right now, any of these teams, their other top 3 teams in Toronto, Boston, and Miami, they're all threatening, and they're all a serious threat to Milwaukee as we stand right now. We'll see how they continue to play as Bledsoe gets back in the fray, and Connaughton just started playing again. So some of these guys they're doing some integration stuff, just like the Lakers and Clippers out west.
I would just say real quick, they did come back and beat Miami. And their starters haven't been playing a ton of minutes. There's been games where Giannis only's played like 20, 25 minutes.
And to that point, that Brooklyn loss is a little deceiving, because I told you about this. They finished that game with DJ Wilson and Frank Mason leading the charge. Mm-hmm. And almost got it done. And we know how anonymous some of them Brooklyn Nets are right now with all the dudes that they don't have playing. But let's stay in the bottom real quick. Last note, the Washington Wizards. Washington Wizards have not won a game. They have actually dropped to the 10th spot in the Eastern Conference. They say, well, what are you talking about? There's only 9 teams that got invited. Well, when you continue to lose games and you talk about winning percentages, Charlotte is your 9th place team right now, because Charlotte has not lost a game because they're not playing. And Washington, Washington is the worst team in the bubble. There's no disputing this right now. So it would stand to reason that they will lose every other game. And if they do, they'll finish in 11th place, because by percentage points, Chicago will beat them. There's your weird stat of the day.